Pay attention to this security camera footage. At a parking lot of a shopping center in Columbia, South Carolina, the CCTV captured exactly 38 seconds in the late afternoon. You see a 31-year-old woman standing next to her car with a flat tire, phone in hand, her posture slightly slouched from fatigue after her shift. A stranger approaches from the edge of the lot. He kneels by the wheel and starts changing the tire. His movements are efficient. Calm. No argument. No tension. Everything looks exactly like a harmless act of help between two strangers. At 6:21 p.m., the woman steps out of the camera frame. A few seconds later, the man follows. The camera records nothing more. This is the last time Laura Mitchell was seen alive. 4 days later, her body was found in an abandoned warehouse dozens of miles away. Most people think this was a random incident. They're wrong. This is the story of how just a few dozen seconds outside the camera's view can erase an entire life. Laura Mitchell, 31 years old, a physical therapy assistant, finished a routine workday and pulled into the parking lot of a shopping center in Columbia. A normal mishap, a flat tire, maybe a nail in the road, maybe worn tread. Wrong time, wrong place, a minor hassle that thousands of people deal with every day. The kind of thing you handle and forget. That's what Laura thought in those first few minutes. That's what anyone in her situation would think. No argument, no sign of danger, no reason to panic. But that assumption was wrong. This wasn't a random incident. And it wasn't just about a tire, because the man who walked over from the parking lot, the man with the ordinary working man appearance, the man who offered to fix the tire for free that Tuesday afternoon, did not show up by chance. His name was Nathan Reed, 44 years old, freelance laborer. Odd jobs fixing cars, day work. Living hand-to-mouth in the outskirts of Columbia. To those around him, Nathan was the kind of person easy to overlook. No stable family, no steady job. No one could recall exactly what he did yesterday. He had been fired multiple times for boundary-crossing behavior with female customers, but never serious enough to become a criminal matter. No violent record, no notable file, the type who exists on the margins of society, seen every day but never really looked at closely. Laura didn't know that. All Laura knew was that her car couldn't move, and this man said he could help. Between 6:07 p.m. and 6:20 p.m., Nathan knelt by the wheel, working skillfully, installing the spare tire while Laura stood nearby, checking her phone, occasionally glancing around the still busy parking lot. Nathan's pickup truck was parked off to the side, just outside the main field of view of the security camera mounted on the building, unnoticed, unobtrusive. The two were complete strangers. No exchange of personal information, no argument, no threats, no sign whatsoever that this was anything other than a random act of kindness. The conflict in this story didn't start with grudge or confrontation. It began the very moment Laura accepted that help, a decision made in a completely ordinary context where trust forms quickly, naturally, and with no clear reason to suspect that the man bending down to fix the tire in front of her was waiting for anything more than a thank you. Nathan Reed didn't appear in police records as a dangerous violent offender, and that's precisely the core reason the killing happened. From 2015 to 2017, Nathan worked at a small auto garage in the Columbia area, a job that required direct customer contact, mostly women coming in alone. During that time, he was never reported for physical assault, never for overt threats, but he was repeatedly flagged for subtle controlling behaviors, standing too close when talking, holding eye contact too long, asking unnecessary questions about personal schedules, showing irritation when female customers refused to keep engaging. Those reports led to Nathan being let go multiple times, each ending with the same conclusion: inappropriate behavior, but not enough elements to constitute a criminal offense. A few customers filed civil complaints, but the cases all stopped at internal warnings, never creating a criminal record, never leaving a clear enough trace for the legal system to hold him. After leaving the garage, Nathan shifted to freelance work, fixing cars on the side, taking day jobs, living scattered across suburban areas, a lifestyle that let him drift through crowds unnoticed. Later investigation showed that throughout that period, Nathan never stopped taking notes. On his phone and tablet, investigators found detailed records of his approaches to women in public, parking lots, gas stations, supermarkets, minor breakdown scenarios, like dead batteries, flat tires, stuck trunks. The notes weren't romantic, nor hateful, they resembled behavioral analysis, where the other person's reactions were categorized by levels of trust, hesitation, refusal, or acceptance. Along with that were years-long search histories about mild sedatives, onset times, minimum dosages, and especially queries about blind spots in security camera systems at crowded public spaces. There was no indication Nathan was seeking financial gain or targeting a specific individual. No evidence of any prior connection between him and Laura Mitchell. The only consistent thread in the data was the focus on the feeling of control, on the moment a stranger agreed to accept help from him. For Nathan, the act of helping wasn't the end goal, it was the test. Each time a woman accepted his assistance, it was a recorded response, a signal that personal boundaries had been opened. Nathan wasn't hunting a specific victim, he waited for the right reaction. He didn't need to know her name, her job, or her life. What he needed was that initial consent, however small, formed in a social context where kindness is considered normal. Offering to fix a tire for free, in Nathan's logic, wasn't a spontaneous gesture, it was an efficient filter, reasonable enough not to raise suspicion, close enough to break distance, and harmless enough that the victim didn't feel the need to be on guard. The investigation notes show Nathan clearly analyzed the difference between those who refused immediately and those who hesitated, then accepted, treating that moment of acceptance as a state change from stranger to controllable subject. The motive for the killing in this case didn't come from impulse, nor from a specific personal conflict. It formed from a years-long thought system where other people's trust was interpreted as a form of permission, and control achieved through outward kindness became an end in itself. What happened in the parking lot during those final 15 minutes wasn't a random sequence of actions, but the result of long-term preparation that Nathan Reed carried with him like a habit, rather than a specific plan, just for that day. In his pickup truck, he always kept items that wouldn't draw attention if viewed individually, a small spray canister hidden in the door compartment, labeled as an ordinary car care product, but actually containing a fast-acting sedative, several plastic zip ties neatly coiled in his tool compartment, and a thick fabric tarp already placed in the truck bed. The rear window of the truck had been covered in advance, not with crude material but with a fixed dark tint film, dark enough that no one could see inside when the vehicle was parked in public. All these details coexisted with the image of a familiar freelance laborer handy with repairs, so that anyone glancing over would only see a normal work truck. When the tire change for Laura Mitchell was finished, Nathan stood up, brushed off his hands, and checked the lug nuts again with deliberate care, creating the impression that he was seeing the job through as a thorough helper. He didn't leave immediately. Instead, Nathan offered to double-check the wheel with a better set of tools that he said were in his pickup, explaining that spare tires sometimes aren't secured tightly, and a quick extra check would only take a few seconds. The offer was made in the same calm tone, without pressure, without any sense of urgency, as if it were the natural next step following the tire repair that had just taken place. Laura, already having accepted help earlier and seeing no abnormal signs, followed Nathan toward the truck bed. In Nathan's logic, this moment was the single most critical transition point, because it came after initial trust had been established, and before any warning signs could emerge. As Laura approached the truck bed area, Nathan opened the tailgate, bent over as if searching for tools, blocking most of the view from anyone who might casually glance their way. In that seamless motion, Nathan used the spray canister containing the sedative, quickly spraying it toward Laura's face at very close range. The action happened in a split second, fast enough to prevent an immediate cry for help, discreet enough to produce no loud sound or obvious movement visible from a distance. The sedative took effect almost instantly. Laura staggered, lost balance, her body reacting slower than her mind, resistance capability dropping dramatically in a few brief but decisive seconds. Nathan caught her, not with prolonged rough force but with calculated movements that took advantage of the moment when her body could no longer coordinate. He lifted Laura into the truck bed, used the prepared tarp to cover her body completely, then closed the tailgate. The entire process of subduing and loading the victim took less than 30 seconds, a window so short that people in the parking lot, if anyone looked that way, would have struggled to distinguish whether this was an unusual situation or just two people handling items. No screams, no dropped objects, no clear signs of a struggle. Right after, Nathan walked around to the driver's side, got into the cab, and started the engine. The timestamp on the camera system recorded the truck leaving the lot at 6:22 p.m. There were no direct witnesses close enough to realize what had just happened. No one approached Nathan to ask questions, and nothing stood out enough to make anyone remember the license plate or the truck's appearance. To those present in the parking lot at that moment, if they noticed at all, it was simply a pickup truck driving away after completing a small job, blending into the late afternoon traffic, carrying inside it an event that went far beyond what the ordinary context of a free tire fix could suggest. The data from the shopping center's security camera system became the only objective record of what occurred between 6:07 p.m. and 6:22 p.m. that afternoon, and precisely because of that, it carries a deceptive sense of completeness. The camera clearly captured the entire process of Nathan Reed approaching Laura Mitchell's car, kneeling by the wheel, removing the old tire, and installing the spare with practiced unhurried movements, showing no gesture of violence or coercion. Laura appeared in frame for most of this time, standing beside her car, occasionally looking toward Nathan, occasionally glancing around the parking lot, her body relaxed, no signs of stress. When viewed for the first time, those images gave no indication of anything unusual. On the contrary, they reinforced the conclusion that this was simply a proper random act of assistance between two strangers. The camera did not capture the area behind Nathan's pickup truck due to the angle being blocked by distance and mounting position, leaving the truck bed completely out of view. That was the only visual gap in the entire sequence of events, and it was the decisive gap. The last frame containing Laura Mitchell was recorded at 6:21 p.m., when she stepped away from her car and moved toward the edge of the frame, where the pickup was parked. A few seconds later, Nathan Reed also left the frame in the same direction. There was no scene of struggle, no sudden movements, no indication that anything serious had just occurred. For the camera system, everything simply ended there. After 6:22 p.m., when the pickup truck left the lot, the video data recorded no further information related to Laura Mitchell. That evening, Laura did not return to her apartment as usual. Her phone didn't go off immediately, but calls from family went unanswered. Messages were left unopened. At first, her loved ones assumed she might be staying over at a friend's place, or had run into a minor delay that kept her late, an assumption that fit Laura's independent lifestyle and flexible schedule. But as the night passed without any contact, concern began to grow. By the next morning, May 15, 2019, at 8:10 a.m., her family officially reported Laura missing, providing police with details about her car, expected travel route, and last known contact. Initial checks found no evidence of a traffic accident or emergency hospital admission, quickly shifting attention to the parking lot camera footage where Laura was last seen. Meanwhile, what happened after the pickup truck left the lot was not captured in any frame. Laura Mitchell was taken to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts near Camden, an old no longer operational facility, isolated from densely populated areas. Later forensic analysis revealed that Laura remained alive for at least 36 hours after the abduction, a period long enough to render all initial assumptions about a quick incident completely wrong. Evidence at the holding site showed she was not restrained in a single fixed position throughout that time. Friction marks on the floor, differences in the distribution of biological traces, and minor changes in the space indicated Laura had been moved between different areas inside the warehouse, as if her captor deliberately changed locations or controlled the space in phases. There was no evidence of a second person's presence at the location while Laura was alive, but the arrangement and traces left behind showed the captivity was not chaotic but controlled. Throughout that period, no signals from Laura's phone were recorded, indicating the device had been turned off or was no longer within network range. To those on the outside, Laura Mitchell simply vanished from her normal routine, leaving behind a sequence of CCTV images that ended at what seemed like an innocuous moment, and a long stretch of time with no witnesses, no footage, and no clear sign of what really happened after the camera lost sight of her. On May 18, 2019, 4 days after Laura Mitchell was reported missing, a construction worker working near the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Camden noticed an unusual foul odor coming from inside the building and reported it to local authorities, leading law enforcement to approach the scene and discover Laura's body in a deep area of the warehouse. The body was found with no signs of life. Its position indicated the victim had been placed there after death rather than having collapsed on the spot, reinforcing the conclusion that the location had been used as a temporary holding site rather than the scene of a random incident. Forensic autopsy results determined the cause of death as asphyxiation combined with head trauma, with evidence showing the force impacts did not occur simultaneously, but in sequence, consistent with a period of restraint prior to death. Time of death was estimated to have occurred within 48 hours after Laura was abducted, confirming that she had remained alive for a significant period after disappearing from the view of the parking lot camera system. Alongside the forensic examination, the investigative team continued focusing on the video footage from the shopping center where Laura was last seen. The CCTV segments were reviewed chronologically, not only to establish the sequence of events, but also to analyze small details that had been overlooked earlier, including Nathan Reed's gait, the way he handled the tire repair, the work clothes he wore, and the characteristics of the pickup truck parked just outside the main camera view. Cross-referencing images from different cameras in the area helped better identify the truck's make and model, the relative height of the driver, and the direction of travel after leaving the lot. From there, investigators expanded their trace to traffic cameras along Interstate 20, the main highway connecting Columbia to surrounding areas, and located a pickup truck with matching characteristics appearing within the time frame consistent with leaving the scene. This data, combined with the shopping center CCTV analysis, allowed them to narrow down the vehicle and shrink the suspect list. Through the vehicle registration database and freelance labor reports in the area, Nathan Reed quickly emerged as a match for the behavioral and vehicle profile that had been documented. Checking his history of temporary residences showed he had been near the abandoned warehouse during the period Laura was missing, consistent with the holding site evidence found there. On May 25, 2019, that is the 11th day since Laura disappeared, law enforcement arrested Nathan Reed. A search of his pickup truck recovered items matching the crime sequence, including plastic zip ties, the truck bed tarp, and other items related to victim restraint. Forensic analysis of these items showed DNA matches to Laura Mitchell, solidifying the chain of evidence from the abduction site to the holding location and the transport vehicle. Faced with the volume of physical evidence and tightly time-linked video data, Nathan Reed could offer no reasonable explanation for the presence of Laura's DNA and the items in his truck. The investigation file was completed with evidence demonstrating premeditated, prolonged criminal conduct carried out with the intent to control the victim. The case went to trial, where the sequence of events from the parking lot, CCTV footage, traffic traces, holding site, and forensic results was presented as a continuous process. In the end, Nathan Reed was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, closing the criminal investigation phase of the case, while the seemingly innocuous images from the security camera became the foundation for reconstructing the entire sequence that led to Laura Mitchell's death. Legally, Laura Mitchell's case closed with a life sentence, but its significance lies not in the length of punishment, but in the way the entire chain of events formed and unfolded. There was no personal dispute, no escalating conflict, no financial motive or direct confrontation leading to this crime. The criminal behavior stemmed from exploiting trust in a completely ordinary context, where a small act of help is socially assumed to be safe and harmless. The parking lot CCTV only captured the stage when everything appeared proper: one person fixing a tire, another standing and waiting, no violence, no coercion, no clear sign strong enough to trigger alertness. It was precisely that normalcy that made Laura's final moment in frame so deceptive, not just to distant observers, but to the surveillance system itself, designed to protect people in public spaces. Only when those images were reanalyzed in the context of an investigation did each small detail reveal its value: the way someone approached, the way a vehicle was parked just outside the camera's view, the seemingly meaningless sequence of movements that, when pieced together, recreated the full criminal process. The case highlights the hidden risk in actions that appear safe. In random interactions society encourages as expressions of kindness and mutual support. It also exposes the existence of systematic approaches where the offender does not seek conflict, but seeks a reaction, does not target a specific individual, but waits for an initial agreement, however small. In this instance, the line between suspicious behavior and criminal conduct was not crossed until it was too late, because the prior indicators were only enough to cause discomfort, not enough to trigger legal intervention mechanisms. The civil complaints, the repeated job terminations, the vague warnings existed scattered and disconnected, never forming a large enough picture to prevent the tragedy. The lesson from this case is not a call to distrust every act of help, but a recognition that not every danger arrives with obvious signs or immediate violence. Some threats are concealed behind calm composure, tested gradually through small interactions, and only revealed once control has been established. In a world where public spaces are increasingly monitored, cameras can record the last moment of a false sense of safety, but it is human judgment that determines whether we recognize and close the gap between the feeling of safety and the real risk that exists even in the most familiar situations. If Laura Mitchell's story has made you realize just how fragile the line between safety and danger can sometimes be, please subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing cases where the moment of last seen alive changed everything. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.